Welcome to Bite at a Time Books Behind the Story, where we answer the questions you have about your favorite classic authors. What inspired your favorite author to write their novels? What was going on in the world at the time? Follow along with us as we tell you what was happening in the world while your favorite authors wrote your favorite classics. My name is Bree Carlile, and I love to read, and wanted to share my passion with listeners like you. If you enjoy our show, be sure to follow our show so you get all the new episodes. You can catch us on all the social medias at Bite at a Time Books, or on our website, biteatatimebooksbehindthestory.com. If you would also like to hear a story by the author we're currently featuring, check out the Bite at a Time Books podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Today we'll be talking about the artistic activities of Lewis Carroll. Literature. From a young age, Dodgson wrote poetry and short stories, contributing heavily to the family magazine, Mishmash, and later sending them to various magazines, enjoying moderate success. Between 1854 and 1856, his work appeared in the national publications, the Comic Times and the Train, as well as smaller magazines, such as the Whitby Gazette and the Oxford Critic. Most of this output was humorous, sometimes satirical, but his standards and ambitions were exacting. I do not think I have yet written anything worthy of real publication, in which I do not include the Whitby Gazette or the Oxonian Advertiser. But I do not despair of doing so someday. He wrote in July 1855. Sometime after 1850, he did write puppet plays for his siblings' entertainment, of which one has survived, La Gaida di Braglia. In March 1856, he published his first piece of work under the name that would make him famous. A romantic poem called Solitude appeared in the Train under the authorship of Lewis Carroll. This pseudonym was a play on his real name. Lewis was the anglicized form of Ludovicus, which was the Latin for Lutwidge, and Carroll, an Irish surname similar to the Latin name Carolus, from which comes the name Charles. The transition went as follows: Charles Ludwig, translated into Latin as Carolus Ludovicus. This was then translated back into English as Carroll Lewis, and then reversed to make Lewis Carroll. This pseudonym was chosen by editor Edmund Yates from a list of 4 submitted by Dodgson, the others being Edgar Cutwellis, Edgar U.C. Westill, and Lewis Carroll. Alice Books. In 1856, Dean Henry Liddell arrived at Christ Church at Oxford University, bringing with him his young family, all of whom would figure largely in Dodgson's life over the following years, and would greatly influence his writing career. Dodgson became close friends with Liddell's wife Lorena and their children, particularly the 3 sisters, Lorena, Edith, and Alice Liddell. He was widely assumed for many years to have derived his own Alice from Alice Liddell. The acrostic poem at the end of Through the Looking Glass spells out her name in full, and there are also many superficial references to her hidden in the text of both books. It has been noted that Dodgson himself repeatedly denied in later life that his little heroine was based on any real child, and he frequently dedicated his works to girls of his acquaintance, adding their names in acrostic poems at the beginning of the text. Gertrude Chataway's name appears in this form at the beginning of The Hunting of the Snark, and it is not suggested that this means that any of the characters in the narrative are based on her. Information is scarce. Dodgson's diaries for the year 1858 to 1862 are missing, but it seems clear that his friendship with the Liddell family was an important part of his life in the late 1850s, and he grew into the habit of taking the children on rowing trips, first the boy Harry, and later the 3 girls, accompanied by an adult friend to nearby Newnham Courtenay, or Godstow. It was on one such expedition on 4 July 1862 that Dodgson invented the outline of the story that eventually became his first and greatest commercial success. He told the story to Alice Liddell, and she begged him to write it down, and Dodgson eventually, after much delay, presented her with a handwritten illustrated manuscript entitled Alice's Adventures Underground in November 1864. Before this, the family of friend and mentor George MacDonald read Dodgson's incomplete manuscript, and the enthusiasm of the MacDonald children encouraged Dodgson to seek publication. In 1863, he had taken the unfinished manuscript to Macmillan the publisher, who liked it immediately. After the possible alternative titles were rejected, Alice Among the Fairies, and Alice's Golden Hour, the work was finally published as Alice's Adventures in Wonderland in 1865 under the Lewis Carroll pen name, which Dodgson had first used some 9 years earlier. The illustrations this time were by Sir John Tenniel. Dodgson evidently thought that a published book would need the skills of a professional artist. Annotated versions provide insights into many of the ideas and hidden meanings that are prevalent in these books. Critical literature has often proposed Freudian interpretations of the book as a descent into the dark world of the subconscious, as well as seeing it as a satire upon contemporary mathematical advances. The overwhelming commercial success of the first Alice book changed Dodgson's life in many ways. The fame of his alter ego, Lewis Carroll, soon spread around the world. He was inundated with fan mail, and with sometimes unwanted attention. Indeed, according to one popular story, Queen Victoria herself enjoyed Alice in Wonderland so much that she commanded that he dedicate his next book to her, and was accordingly presented with his next work, a scholarly mathematical volume entitled An Elementary Treatise on Determinants. Dodgson himself vehemently denied this story, commenting, "It is utterly false in every particular. Nothing even resembling it has occurred." And it is unlikely for other reasons. As T.B. Strong comments in a Times article, it would have been clear contrary to all his practice to identify the author of Alice with the author of his mathematical works. He also began earning quite substantial sums of money, but continued with his seemingly disliked post at Christ Church. Late in 1871, he published the sequel, Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There. The title page of the first edition erroneously gives 1872 as the date of publication. Its somewhat darker mood possibly reflects changes in Dodgson's life. His father's death in 1868 plunged him into a depression that lasted some years. The Hunting of the Snark. In 1876, Dodgson produced his next great work, The Hunting of the Snark, a fantastical, nonsense poem with illustrations by Henry Holiday, exploring the adventures of a bizarre crew of 9 tradesmen and 1 beaver who set off to find the Snark. It received largely mixed reviews from Carroll's contemporary reviewers, but was enormously popular with the public, having been reprinted 17 times between 1876 and 1908, and has seen various adaptations into musicals, opera, theater, plays, and music. Painter Dante Gabriel Rossetti reputedly became convinced that the poem was about him. Sylvie and Bruno. In 1895, 30 years after the publication of his masterpieces, Carroll attempted a comeback, producing a 2-volume tale of the fairy siblings, Sylvie and Bruno. Carroll entwines 2 plots set in 2 alternative worlds, one set in rural England, and the other in the fairy tale kingdoms of Elf and Outland and others. The fairy tale world satirizes English society, and, more specifically, the world of academia. Sylvie and Bruno came out in 2 volumes and is considered a lesser work, although it has remained in print for over a century. Photography. In 1856, Dodgson took up the new art form of photography under the influence first of his uncle, Skeffington Ludwig, and later of his Oxford friend, Reginald Southey. He soon excelled at the art and became a well-known gentleman photographer, and he seems even to have toyed with the idea of making a living out of it in his very early years. A study by Roger Taylor and Edward Wakeling exhaustively lists every surviving print, and Taylor calculates that just over half of Dodgson's surviving work depicts young girls. 30 surviving photographs depict nude or semi-nude children. About 60% of Dodgson's original photographic portfolio was deliberately destroyed. Dodgson also made many studies of men, women, boys, and landscapes. His subjects also include skeletons, dogs, statues, paintings, and trees. His pictures of children were taken with a parent in attendance, and many of the pictures were taken in the Liddell Garden because natural sunlight was required for good exposures. Dodgson also found photography to be a useful entree into higher social circles. During the most productive part of his career, he made portraits of notable sitters, such as John Everett Millais, Ellen Terry, Maggie Spearman, Dante Gabriel Rossetti, Julia Margaret Cameron, Michael Faraday, Lord Salisbury, and Alfred Tennyson. By the time that Dodgson abruptly ceased photography, 1880, after 24 years, he had established his own studio on the roof of Tom Quad. created around 3,000 images, and became an amateur master of the medium. Though fewer than 1,000 images have survived time and deliberate destruction. He stopped taking photographs because keeping his studio working was too time-consuming. He used the wet collodion process. Commercial photographers who started using the dry plate process in the 1870s took pictures more quickly. He often altered his photographs through blurring techniques or by painting over them, a practice new to the 19th century. He exerted his agency of this craft by literally rewriting the text created by the image to produce a new dialogue about childhood. However, popular taste changed with the advent of modernism, affecting the types of photographs that he produced. Inventions. To promote letter writing, Dodgson invented the Wonderland postage stamp case in 1889. This was a cloth-backed folder with 12 slots, 2 marked for inserting the most commonly used penny stamp, and 1 each for the other current denominations up to 1 shilling. The folder was then put into a slipcase decorated with a picture of Alice on the front and the Cheshire Cat on the back. It intended to organize stamps wherever one stored their writing implements. Carroll expressly notes in 8 or 9 wise words about letter writing, it is not intended to be carried in a pocket or purse, as the most common individual stamps could easily be carried on their own. The pack included a copy of a pamphlet version of this lecture. Another invention was a writing tablet called the nyctograph that allowed note-taking in the dark, thus eliminating the need to get out of bed and strike a light when one woke with an idea. The device consisted of a gridded card with 16 squares and a system of symbols representing an alphabet of Dodgson's design, using letter shapes similar to the graffiti writing system on a palm device. He also devised a number of games, including an early version of what today is known as Scrabble. Devised sometime in 1878, he invented the doublet, a form of brain teaser that is still popular today, changing one word into another by altering one letter at a time. Each successive change always resulting in a genuine word. For instance, cat is transformed into dog by the following steps: cat, cot, dot, dog. It first appeared in the 29 March 1879 issue of Vanity Fair, with Carroll writing a weekly column for the magazine for 2 years. The final column, dated 9 April 1881. The games and puzzles of Lewis Carroll were the subject of Martin Gardner's March 1960 Mathematical Games column in Scientific American. Other items include a rule for finding the day of the week for any date, a means for justifying right margins on a typewriter, a steering device for a velociman, a type of tricycle, fair elimination rules for tennis tournaments, a new sort of postal money order, rules for reckoning postage, rules for a win in betting, rules for dividing a number by various divisors, a cardboard scale for the senior common room at Christchurch, which, held next to a glass, ensured the right amount of liqueur for the price paid, a double-sided adhesive strip to fasten envelopes or mount things in books, a device for helping a bedridden invalid read from a book placed sideways, and at least 2 ciphers for cryptography. He also proposed alternative systems of parliamentary representation. He proposed the so-called Dodgson's method, using the Condorcet method. In 1884, he proposed a proportional representation system based on multi-member districts, each voter casting only a single vote, quotas as minimum requirements to take seats, and votes transferable by candidates through what is now called liquid democracy. Thank you for joining Bite at a Time Books Behind the Story today, while we answered some questions you have about one of your favorite classic authors. Again, my name is Bree Carlile, and I hope you come back next time when we answer more questions about one of your favorite classic authors. If you enjoyed our show, be sure to follow us so you get all the new episodes. We would also love for you to drop us a rating on your favorite podcast platform. You can catch us on all the social medias at Bite at a Time Books, or check out our website, biteatatimebooksbehindthestory.com. Our show is part of the Bite at a Time Books Productions Network. If you would also like to hear a story by the author we are currently featuring, check out the Bite at a Time Books podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, or on biteatatimebooks.com.